Racist rich woman bullies. The wrong black janitor, he teaches her a lesson. The polished marble floors of the Brooklyn headquarters of Avalon Oil and Gas gleamed under the overhead lights. The lobby, an opulent showcase of wealth and power, bustled with executives and clients. Among them walked Amelia VanHolt, a well-known socialite, and the daughter of one of Avalon's major shareholders. Draped in designer fashion, she moved through the room with an air of superiority, clutching an overpriced latte in her perfectly manicured hand. In the corner, a janitor in navy coveralls silently mopped the floor. His name tag read Benjamin, but no one noticed. To them, he was invisible, a man in worn shoes and a faded uniform. Except, Benjamin saw everything, each hurried step, each whispered conversation. He had been mopping these floors for the past week, quietly observing the power plays and whispered ambitions that echoed through the grand hallways. But before we dive into what happens next, I'd love to know, where are you tuning in from today? Drop a comment below. As Amelia approached, she barely glanced at Benjamin. Instead, she rolled her eyes as if the mere presence of a janitor offended her. Then, with a casual flick of her wrist, she deliberately tipped her latte, spilling the steaming liquid across the freshly cleaned floor. The coffee splattered, pooling at Benjamin's feet. "Oops," she drawled, a smirk tugging at the corner of her lips. "You missed a spot?" Benjamin's grip on the mop tightened. His jaw clenched, but his expression remained calm, composed. He knelt, dabbing at the spill, locking eyes with her. There was something unsettling about his gaze, steadfast, unyielding. "Is there a problem?" Amelia sneered, her tone dripping with entitlement. "You're paid to clean, aren't you?" Benjamin didn't respond. Instead, he stood, rolling the mop back to its cart. As he walked away, he simply said, "You'll learn." Amelia's laughter echoed behind him. "From you? Hardly." The rest of the day passed in a blur, but something about Benjamin's demeanor lingered. There was an air of quiet authority beneath his unassuming exterior, something that gnawed at her as she made her way to the executive conference room that evening for a high-stakes shareholder meeting. As Amelia settled into her seat, the door opened. All eyes turned as Benjamin walked in, no longer in coveralls but a tailored black suit. His posture was straight, his presence commanding. A murmur spread through the room as he strode to the head of the table. Amelia's face drained of color. "Good evening," Benjamin began, his voice deep, measured. "For those who haven't had the pleasure of meeting me, I'm Benjamin Carter, CEO of Avalon Oil and Gas." The silence was deafening. Amelia's eyes widened in disbelief. "I've spent the past week undercover," Benjamin continued, his gaze locking onto Amelia. "I wanted to see how people here, especially those with privilege, treat the invisible workforce. What I witnessed was enlightening." Amelia's throat tightened. Benjamin's eyes never left hers. "In this company, respect isn't optional. I won't tolerate behavior that demeans others. Effective immediately, there will be mandatory training for all staff, including executives." His voice hardened. "Some lessons are best learned the hard way." As he walked out of the room, leaving Amelia in stunned silence, one thing was clear. Benjamin Carter wasn't just a janitor or a CEO. He was a reminder that power wasn't always in appearance. It was in character. The conference room was suffocatingly silent. Amelia sat frozen, the weight of Benjamin's words crushing the smug arrogance she'd worn like armor. The other executives exchanged uneasy glances, some shifting uncomfortably in their leather chairs. No one dared speak. The atmosphere crackled with tension. Amelia's father, Richard VanHolt, a powerful shareholder with deep ties to Avalon Oil and Gas, broke the silence. His voice, usually booming, wavered slightly. "Benjamin, surely there's some misunderstanding here." Benjamin raised a hand, cutting him off. "No misunderstandings, Richard. I've seen everything I needed to see. It's not just Amelia. This company has fostered a culture of entitlement and disregard for those who keep its foundation strong. That ends now." Amelia's pulse raced. Her mind scrambled for a defense, an excuse, but nothing came. Benjamin's eyes were locked on her, cold and unyielding. "Actions have consequences," he said, his voice low but thunderous in its authority. You can't seriously be considering— Amelia began, but her voice faltered. Benjamin leaned forward, his presence suffocating. Do you think your family's wealth protects you? That spilling coffee on a janitor and mocking him would go unnoticed because you're untouchable? This isn't a private club, Amelia. This is a business, my business. A ripple of shock ran through the room. Executives who had once brushed past Benjamin without a second glance now saw him in an entirely different light. The quiet janitor had been the king all along, and they'd played their hands poorly. Benjamin straightened. Your behavior jeopardizes the integrity of this company. Effective immediately, Amelia, you are suspended from any involvement with Avalon operations. I'll be recommending to the board that your family's influence here be reevaluated, permanently. The color drained from Amelia's face. You can't do that. I can, Benjamin interrupted, his voice like steel. And I will. Richard VanHolt stood, his face red with indignation. This is outrageous. We've invested millions in this company. You can't just erase us. Benjamin's eyes locked onto Richard. Your investments are noted, but so is your family's conduct. I built this company from nothing. I scrubbed oil rigs, negotiated deals, and mopped floors to understand every layer of this business. No one, no amount of money, can undermine the values I've instilled here. He turned his attention back to the room. If any of you share Amelia's mindset, consider this your warning. Respect and integrity are non-negotiable. This company will no longer tolerate the toxic culture that's been allowed to fester. The room buzzed with whispered conversations. Amelia's eyes darted around, seeking support, but found none. The executives, sensing a shift in power, aligned themselves silently with Benjamin. No one was willing to jeopardize their position for her. As Benjamin walked out, the weight of his authority settled over the room like a storm cloud. Amelia sat, stunned and speechless, the full force of her actions finally sinking in. The man she had humiliated in front of the entire lobby had dismantled her world in mere minutes. In the hallway, Benjamin paused, looking out over the sprawling city of Brooklyn from the glass wall. His assistant, a sharp-eyed woman named Maya, approached. The board is already reaching out, fully supportive of your stance, she reported. They've been looking for a reason to distance themselves from the VanHolts. Benjamin nodded, his gaze distant. They've had free reign for too long. People like Amelia think power is inherited. They're wrong. Maya smiled. They'll learn. They all will. Benjamin turned, the weight of decades of hard work, discrimination, and quiet perseverance settling in his chest. He had built this empire brick by brick, and no one, not even the powerful VanHolts, would threaten it. As he walked down the corridor, he knew this was more than a personal victory. It was a lesson, one that echoed through the marble halls of Avalon Oil and Gas. Power was earned, respect demanded, and arrogance humbled. And those who underestimated the quiet strength of the overlooked would always learn the hardest lessons of all. If you enjoyed this story, it doesn't cost you anything, and you'll make me very happy. Thank you, and I look forward to your like.